They rejected you and you went silent. Not dramatic silence, not silence that screams, "Look at me not talking to you," just actual silence. Complete withdrawal, total absence. They pushed you away and you didn't push back. Didn't fight for them, didn't beg them to reconsider. Didn't chase, didn't protest, just accepted the rejection and went completely silent. Disappeared from their life so thoroughly it's like you never existed. No texts, no calls, no social media interaction, no mutual friend updates, no accidental run-ins. Nothing, just silence where you used to be. And the silence is destroying them. They expected reaction, expected you to be hurt, to be angry, to be desperate, expected you to try to change their mind. Expected you to pursue them after they rejected you the way you pursued them when they withdrew before. Expected the rejection to create the usual dynamic where they have power through rejecting and you're powerless through being rejected. But your silence broke the expected dynamic, gave them no reaction to feel powerful about, no pursuing to validate that they mattered, no hurt to confirm their impact, just silence. And silence is communicating something they weren't prepared for. You accepted the rejection completely. Moved on completely, are done completely. And being done is teaching them through absence what your presence never taught them. The silence is destroying them because it's the ultimate power reversal. They rejected you thinking rejection gave them power, gave them control, gave them the position of strength. But your silence took all the power. Your complete absence is showing them that power wasn't in rejecting. Power is in the ability to walk away and never look back. Power is in being unbothered enough by the rejection that silence is genuine, not strategic. Power is in them not mattering enough to you anymore to generate any response at all. Not anger, not hurt, not pursuing. Just nothing. And nothing is more devastating than something. Something they could respond to. Nothing leaves them with just themselves and the growing realization that they made catastrophic mistake. Why silence after rejection is more devastating than any words you could say. Words give them something to argue with, something to dismiss, something to use to confirm their decision was right. If you told them you're hurt, they could tell themselves you're too emotional. If you told them you're angry, they could tell themselves you're too reactive. If you begged them to reconsider, they could tell themselves you're too needy. Words provide them with justification, with confirmation that rejecting you was correct choice, that you're too much, that they need space from your intensity, that the relationship was overwhelming. But silence gives them nothing to use, nothing to dismiss, nothing to confirm they were right. Just absence. And absence forces them to sit with the decision without being able to justify it through your reaction to the decision. Silence is also more devastating because it's undeniable evidence you're not waiting for them. Words could be interpreted as you still being invested, still caring enough to express, still hoping they'll change their mind. But silence is you being uninvested, not caring enough to express anything. Not hoping, because hope requires engagement and you're not engaged. The lack of engagement is evidence that you took the rejection seriously, accepted it as final, moved forward without them. And moving forward without them is devastating to them because it's teaching them that rejection is mutual now. They rejected you, your silence is rejecting them back. And being rejected by someone they rejected is role reversal they didn't anticipate and can't handle. Your silence is more devastating because it's creating uncertainty they can't resolve. When you were responsive, even when hurt or angry, they had information. They knew how you felt, knew where you stood, knew what you were thinking. But silence gives them no information. They don't know if you're hurt or unbothered, don't know if you missed them or have forgotten them, don't know if you're suffering or thriving, don't know if the door is open or permanently closed. The uncertainty is torture, is them not being able to settle into any narrative about what happened because they have no data about your state. The no data is creating obsessive thinking, obsessive wondering, obsessive need to know that can't be satisfied because you're silent. An obsessive unsatisfied need is destroying them slowly through their own thoughts, spiraling without resolution. The specific ways your silence is humbling them. The silence is forcing them to see they weren't as important as they thought they were. While you were responsive, while you were pursuing, while you were trying, they could tell themselves they were central to your life, that you needed them, that you were oriented around them, that they mattered enormously. But silence is showing them they're not central, not needed, not orienting your life, not mattering the way they thought they mattered. The revelation that they're not as important as their ego needed them to be is humbling. is destroying their self-concept, is teaching them that they overestimated their impact, their importance, their place in your life. And learning you overestimated yourself is humiliation, is ego injury, is them being forced to see themselves as less significant than they believed. Your silence is also humbling them by revealing they took you for granted, took your pursuit for granted, took your patience for granted, took your willingness to stay despite their patterns for granted, assumed you'd always be there, always be available, always give them another chance. But silence is proving they were wrong. You're not there, not available, not giving another chance. The proving wrong is them facing they made assumptions that turned out to be false, made calculations that turned out to be miscalculations, made predictions that turned out to be wrong. Being wrong is humbling, is them facing their arrogance, their entitlement, their belief that they could reject you and you'd remain available, that they could push you away and you'd stay close, that they could end it and you'd keep the door open. The assumptions being destroyed through your silence is humiliation through being revealed as wrong. The silence is humbling them by showing them they're not in control. They thought rejecting you gave them control. Control over the terms, control over the ending, control over whether reconciliation happens. But silence took the control, took their power to determine what happens next, took their ability to manage the dynamic. They can't reconcile if you're silent, can't restore contact if you're unavailable, can't control the narrative if you're not participating in creating narrative. The loss of control is humbling, is them being powerless, is them experiencing what you experienced when they were controlling the relationship through their withdrawal. And experiencing powerlessness when you thought you had power is humiliation, is lesson in what power actually is. And power is yours through silence. Theirs is gone through your absence, making their rejection irrelevant. What they're doing in response to the silence and why it's all failing, they're trying to break the silence indirectly, posting things designed for you to see, using mutual friends to get information, creating situations where you might have to respond. The indirect attempts are them trying to make you engage without having to directly reach out, trying to restore contact without being vulnerable enough to pursue directly. But indirect attempts are failing. You're not engaging with posts, not responding to information through friends, not taking bait of manufactured situations. The failing is teaching them that indirect doesn't work with you, that you're not playing games, that you're actually silent, not strategically silent. That the silence is real boundary they can't manipulate around. Some are trying direct contact but doing it in defended ways. Casual text that pretends nothing happened. Question about something mundane. Breadcrumb of attention that's designed to test whether you're still available. The defended direct is them trying to restore contact without acknowledging what happened, without taking responsibility, without being real about the rejection and their regret about the rejection. But defended direct is failing. You're not responding to casual, not answering mundane, not taking breadcrumb bait. The not responding is teaching them that defended doesn't work, that if they want contact, they need to be real, need to be vulnerable, need to acknowledge what happened and take responsibility for it. And most can't do that, can't be vulnerable enough. So defended attempts fail and silence continues. Others are trying to make you jealous, making sure you know through various channels that they're fine, that they're seeing other people, that they're unbothered by the rejection they initiated. The jealousy attempts are them trying to disturb your silence, trying to make you care enough to respond, trying to make you react. But jealousy attempts are failing spectacularly. You're not jealous, not disturbed, not reacting. The silence continues regardless of what they're doing with other people. The silence, despite jealousy attempts, is teaching them that you're genuinely moved on, genuinely unbothered, genuinely not caring what they do because you're focused on yourself, not on them. And being genuinely uncared about is humbling, is them realizing they can't manipulate you into caring, can't create reaction through performing moved on, can only experience the reality that you have actually moved on. The progression of their internal experience as silence continues. Initially they feel relief mixed with vindication. They made right choice. The silence proves you're accepting the rejection, proves the ending is happening smoothly, proves they're free. The relief lasts days, maybe weeks, lasts until they realize the silence isn't temporary cooling off, is permanent new state. Then relief shifts to confusion. Confusion about why you're not reaching out, why you're not checking in, why you're so completely absent. The confusion is them not understanding, not having framework for someone being this unbothered by rejection, not knowing how to interpret silence that gives them nothing to interpret. Confusion shifts to concern. Concern that maybe you're actually done, that maybe the silence is real, that maybe they miscalculated, that maybe rejecting you was a mistake. The concern is first crack in their certainty, first doubt, first wondering if they got it wrong. The wondering creates anxiety, creates need to know where you stand, creates impulse to reach out. But reaching out would be admitting doubt, admitting they might have been wrong, admitting they want connection they rejected. So they resist reaching out, resist while concern grows into low-level panic. Panic intensifies as silence continues. Panic that they're losing you, that they've already lost you, that it's too late, that the rejection is permanent, not because they made it permanent, but because you made it permanent through accepting it completely. The panic creates desperate need to restore contact, creates reaching out, creates them breaking first. Breaking because panic overrides pride, overrides defense. Overrides their usual pattern of maintaining distance. The breaking first is humiliation, is them being reduced to pursuing you after rejecting you, is role reversal they never intended, never wanted, never imagined would happen. And happening is destroying them, is teaching them that rejection isn't power. Silence is power, and you have the power now. Why their regret is intensifying rather than fading. Regret usually fades with time, with distance, with new experiences. But their regret is intensifying because the silence is preventing any resolution. Resolution requires conversation, requires mutual understanding. But silence prevents all of that, leaves them stuck in the rejection without being able to move through it, without being able to apologize, without being able to attempt reconciliation. The stuck in unresolved rejection is creating obsessive rumination. Obsessive thinking about what happened, about why they rejected you, about whether they were right, about whether they can undo it. The obsessive thinking without resolution is intensifying regret because thinking about it makes it bigger, makes it more present, makes it more painful, rather than letting it fade. The regret is also intensifying because comparison is teaching them what they lost. They're dating other people or trying to, and everyone is comparison to you. Everyone is less understanding, less patient, less accepting of their patterns. Everyone is requiring more, tolerating less, expecting them to actually show up. And comparison to what they have now versus what they had with you is teaching them you were exceptional. We're giving them something rare. We're providing understanding and patience most people don't provide. The teaching through comparison is making regret worse, is showing them clearly what they rejected, and seeing clearly what you rejected after rejecting it is intensified regret that grows rather than fades. Time is also making regret worse because time is proving your silence is permanent. Early on, they could tell themselves silence is temporary. You need time, you'll come around. You'll reach out eventually, but time passing without you reaching out is destroying those narratives. Is proving silence is permanent, is proving you're actually done. And permanent done is heavier than temporary silence, heavier regret, heavier loss, heavier consequence. The heaviness is accumulating, is growing with time, is teaching them that some decisions can't be undone, some losses are permanent, some silences don't break, and theirs doesn't break. And unbreaking silence after their rejection is permanent regret about rejection they can't take back. What the silence is teaching them about you that they couldn't see before. The silence is teaching them you're stronger than they thought. They thought you needed them, thought you were dependent, thought you'd fall apart without them. But silence is proving they were wrong. You're not needing them, not dependent, not falling apart. You're fine, strong, whole without them. The strength is revelation, is them seeing you differently, seeing you as more formidable than they gave you credit for, seeing you as a person who can walk away from rejection without looking back. And walking away without looking back requires strength they didn't think you had. The revelation of your strength is humbling them, is teaching them they underestimated you. And underestimating someone, then losing them through underestimating them, is humiliation through being wrong about who they are. Your silence is also teaching them you had more self-respect than they realized. They thought your pursuit meant you lacked boundaries, lacked self-respect, would tolerate anything. But silence is proving they were wrong. The silence is ultimate boundary, ultimate self-respect, ultimate statement of you're not tolerating being rejected and staying available. You're accepting the rejection and removing yourself completely. The self-respect is revelation. Is them seeing you valued yourself more than they thought, protected yourself more than they predicted, had boundaries they didn't recognize were there, because boundaries only become visible when enforced. An enforced boundary through silence is them seeing your self-respect clearly. And seeing it is them being humbled by it, being taught that you were always worthy, always boundaried. Just gave them grace they mistook for lack of standards. Grace that's gone now. And gone grace is them facing. They destroyed something given freely through taking it for granted. The silence is teaching them that you're capable of moving on. They thought you'd carry them forever, thought they'd be unforgettable, thought they'd be permanent presence in your life, whether together or apart. But silence is teaching them you can forget, can move on, can make them irrelevant. The capability to move on is devastating to them, is destroying their belief that they mattered permanently, is teaching them they were temporary. We're chapter not whole book, were person you loved but are now person you loved past tense. The past tense love is humbling, is them being relegated to past, being left behind, being moved on from. And being moved on from by someone they rejected is role reversal that's destroying their ego. Their importance, their belief that they were unforgettable. You're proving you can forget, and proving it through silence that never breaks. How your silence is creating the exact consequence they needed but never got. The silence is teaching them that rejection is permanent consequence. Every other person they rejected eventually came back, eventually reached out, eventually gave them another chance. The pattern taught them that rejection is reversible, that they could reject people and restore connection when they wanted. That rejection was a tool for managing distance while maintaining ultimate access. But your silence is destroying that belief, teaching them rejection can be permanent, can cost them people permanently, can create loss that's irreversible. The teaching is consequence they needed to learn that patterns have real costs. That rejecting people costs you the people. That assumed reversibility is false assumption. Some rejections create permanent loss. Yours did. And creating permanent loss through their rejection is consequence teaching them what words never taught them. Your silence is also teaching them that their patterns don't work with everyone. Worked with others who pursued despite rejection, who maintained contact despite distance, who gave chances despite being rejected repeatedly. But patterns don't work with you. You're not pursuing, not maintaining contact, not giving more chances. You're silent. And silent is you showing them that their patterns have limits. Work on some people. Don't work on you. And not working on you is then facing that their patterns are a problem. That what they've been doing costs them people who won't tolerate it. That they need to change patterns or they'll keep losing people who refuse to accommodate patterns. The teaching is then facing their patterns directly. Facing that patterns create loss. Facing that loss is consequence. And consequence is theirs to sit with through your silence, making consequence inescapable. The silence is teaching them about power and who actually has it. They thought they had power through rejecting, through withdrawing, through controlling distance. But power through rejection only works if the rejected person keeps trying, keeps being available, keeps the door open. You didn't. You closed the door, locked it, threw away key. The door closing is you taking the power, taking control, making the rejection mutual through accepting it so completely they can't undo it without being vulnerable. And being vulnerable is thing they couldn't do. Thing that led to rejection. Thing that silence is now requiring if they want contact. The requirement is you having power is them being powerless, is reversal teaching them that real power is in the silence, not in the rejection. You have real power, they're discovering they never had power they thought they had. While they'll probably reach out and why you shouldn't respond, the silence will eventually become unbearable, will override their pride, will override their defense, will drive them to reach out. The reach out will seem significant, will feel like breakthrough, will appear to be them finally pursuing what they rejected. But the reach out is usually just discomfort management. They're not reaching out because they've changed. They're reaching out because the silence hurts and they want the hurt to stop. They want to know you're still available, want to know the door is still open, want to know they could have you back if they wanted you back. The wanting to know is about them managing their uncertainty, managing their regret, managing their ego injury from your silence. Not about them being ready to actually meet you, not about them having developed capacity, just about them needing relief from consequence. If you respond, you'll teach them that silence is temporary, that eventual reach out works, that they can reject you and restore connection when they're ready. The teaching will ensure pattern repeats. They'll be with you until intimacy gets uncomfortable. They'll reject you again. They'll experience silence again. They'll reach out again, and you'll be trained to respond to eventual reach out. The cycle continues until you're too depleted to continue, or until you maintain the boundary that silence is. Maintaining means not responding, means letting their reach out go unanswered, means continuing the silence even when they're trying to break it. The continued silence is you maintaining the consequence, maintaining the teaching, maintaining the boundary that protects you from more of same pattern. You should only respond if there's evidence of actual change. Evidence means therapy. Sustained therapy over significant time period. Behavioral change that's visible and verifiable. Development of capacity they didn't have when they rejected you. The evidence is then proving they used the silence productively. Used it as motivation to address their patterns. Used it to grow, to become different, to develop ability to actually meet you. Without evidence, the reach out is just words, just performance, just attempt to restore connection without doing the work that would make connection sustainable. Words without work is same person who rejected you. Same patterns that created the rejection. Same outcome inevitable. Silence continuing is you protecting yourself from same outcome. Is you requiring evidence, not words. Is you maintaining boundary until boundary is no longer necessary because they've actually changed. And actual change is rare. Is why silence should continue with most reach outs. Should continue until proven unnecessary through sustained demonstrated capacity. What your silence is revealing about their incapacity that they can't hide from anymore. The silence is forcing them to face they're not emotionally equipped for relationship. While you were available, while you were responsive, they could maintain belief they were capable, could tell themselves relationship didn't work because of timing, circumstances, compatibility. Could project relationship problems onto external factors. But silence removed external factors, removed you as variable, left them alone with themselves, and alone with themselves is them facing they're the problem. They're the one who can't do intimacy. They're the one who rejects people who get close. They're the one who's incapable of sustaining connection. The facing is them seeing their incapacity clearly, seeing it without being able to project it onto you or circumstances, just seeing it as truth about themselves. And seeing truth is first step toward change. Or first step toward resignation. Depends on whether they use seeing to motivate growth or just suffer from seeing without growing. Your silence is also revealing they don't have skills for healthy relationship, skills for communication, for vulnerability, for consistency, for emotional regulation, for showing up. While you were there, you were compensating for their lack of skills. You were doing emotional labor. You were managing the relationship. You were providing stability. Your compensating masked their lack of skills, made it seem like relationship was functioning when actually you were doing all the functioning. But silence removed your compensating, and removing your compensating is revealing they don't have skills, can't manage relationship themselves, can't maintain connection without someone doing the work for them. The revelation is humbling, is them seeing they were dependent on you doing work they should have been doing, and being dependent while performing independent is humiliation through being revealed as false. The silence is revealing they're not healthy enough for partnership. Partnership requires two people capable of showing up, capable of being present, capable of doing their share. But they're not capable. They're defended. They're avoidant. They're unable to be vulnerable enough for partnership to function. The unable is what silence is revealing, is what their being alone with themselves is forcing them to see. They're not partner material, not in current state, not without significant growth. Not without therapy. Not without years of work developing capacity they don't have. The revelation is devastating. Is destroying identity they had. Identity of being person capable of relationship who just hasn't found right relationship. Silence is teaching them the problem isn't finding right relationship. Problem is being wrong person for relationship. Being incapable person. And incapable is status that's humbling. Is status they can change through work. But work is scary, is vulnerable, is thing they've been avoiding. And avoiding is why they're incapable. And incapable is why you're silent. And silent is consequence they're living with, while facing their incapacity that created the consequence. The permanent mark your silence leaves regardless of whether they change. You're the one who didn't wait, didn't chase, didn't keep door open, didn't give them power to reject and restore at will. You're the one who accepted rejection as final and acted accordingly. The acceptance as final is permanent mark, Is them forever knowing that someone who loved them could let them go completely, could move on, could be unbothered, could make them irrelevant through silence. The knowing is threatening to their ego, to their identity, to their belief about their importance. You proved they're not so important that people can't let them go, not so unforgettable that silence doesn't work, not so necessary that your life stops without them. The proof is permanent, Mark. Is them carrying you forever as person who humbled them through silence. Your silence also becomes permanent standard for consequences. Every future rejection they make will be measured against what happened with you. Will be compared to the silence that taught them rejection can be permanent. Will create anxiety about whether this rejection will also result in permanent loss. The anxiety is consequence of your silence extending into their future. Teaching them to be more careful with rejection, more aware that rejection might be final, more hesitant to reject because rejection might cost them permanently. The changed relationship to rejection is permanent, Mark. Is your silence teaching them forever about consequences even when you're no longer present, to enforce consequences? You also become permanent evidence they're capable of regretting. They perform not caring, performed moving on easily, performed being unbothered by relationship endings. But your silence created regret they couldn't perform away, created longing they couldn't defend against, created missing they couldn't rationalize away. The experiencing undeniable regret is proof they're capable of depth they denied, capable of caring deeply even while defending against caring, capable of attachment that creates pain when attachment is severed. The capability is permanent, Mark, is them knowing they can feel deeply, can attach deeply, can regret deeply, even though defended state tries to prevent depth. You proved depth exists underneath defense, and proving it is permanent, Mark, is then carrying knowledge that they're capable of feeling things their defense tried to prevent them from feeling. Capable is threatening because capable means responsible, means they could have felt more while with you, could have been less defended, could have chosen differently. The could have is permanent regret. Is your silence teaching them forever about roads not taken, choices that cost them you, patterns that created permanent loss they're carrying as permanent mark of their incapacity meeting your silence? How your silence is forcing them to confront what they actually lost. The silence is giving them time to inventory what's missing. While you were available, while contact existed, they couldn't fully see what you provided because it was always there. Your understanding was constant background presence they didn't notice. Your patience was a reliable feature they took for granted. Your acceptance of their defended state was accommodation they mistook for normal. But silence removed all of it. And removal is teaching them through absence what presence was giving them. They're experiencing life without your understanding and discovering no one else understands them the way you did. They're experiencing life without your patience and discovering everyone else has limits they reach much faster. They're experiencing life without your acceptance and discovering most people won't tolerate their patterns at all. The inventory through loss is them cataloging everything you were providing that they didn't recognize as gift until gift was removed. The cataloging is creating detailed awareness of what they destroyed, and detailed awareness is more painful than vague sense of loss. Is specific knowing of specific things they no longer have access to because they rejected the person providing those specific things. They're also confronting that they rejected someone who actually saw them. Most people see their surface, see the defended exterior, see the performance of independence and self-sufficiency. But you saw underneath, saw the scared person beneath the cold exterior, saw the wounds driving the patterns, saw them completely, and being seen completely is rare, is precious, is thing most people spend lifetimes searching for. They had it, they rejected it, and now they're with people who see only surface, who take them at face value, who don't see underneath. And not being seen is lonelier than being seen while defended ever was. The loneliness of not being seen is teaching them what they lost. Teaching them that being seen completely, even when being seen was uncomfortable, was better than not being seen at all, was intimacy they couldn't appreciate while having it but miss devastatingly now that it's gone. Your silence is protecting that seeing from being accessed, is keeping you and your seeing away from them, and being away from the only person who saw them is them living in permanent state of being unseen, and unseen as consequence of rejecting the person who saw. The silence is also forcing them to face their rejected safety. You a safe person, person they could be real with, person they didn't have to perform for, person who wouldn't judge their struggles or use their vulnerabilities against them. Safety is rare. Most people aren't safe. Most people judge. Most people weaponize vulnerability. Most people require performance. But you were different. You created space where they could drop performance, where they could be flawed, where they could be human. And rejecting safety is rejecting thing everyone needs, thing that makes life bearable, thing that makes intimacy possible. They're living without safety now, living in a world where everyone requires performance, where vulnerability is risk, where being real is dangerous. And living without safety is teaching them that safety is not weakness or pressure like they told themselves. Safety is necessity, is thing they need, is thing they destroyed by rejecting you. And destroyed safety is consequence they're living with. Is them performing for everyone now because the one person they didn't have to perform for is silent, is gone, is protecting her safety from being taken for granted again? Why your continued silence is the most loving thing you can do for both of you. The silence is protecting you from more harm. If you broke silence, if you responded to their reach out, if you gave them access without evidence of change, you'd be exposing yourself to same patterns, same rejection, same defended inability to meet you, same cycle of getting close then being pushed away. The cycle would harm you again, would deplete you again, would cost you more time, more energy, more of yourself. The silence is preventing that harm. Is boundary protecting you from patterns that proved themselves harmful? Is you loving yourself enough to maintain protection even when maintaining it is hard? Even when you miss them? Even when you wonder if you should give them chance? The self-love through maintained silence is you prioritizing your well-being over their desire for access. And prioritizing yourself is most loving thing you can do for yourself. The silence is also most loving thing you can do for them is giving them consequence severe enough to potentially drive change. Every other person who broke silence taught them that patterns have temporary consequences they can wait out. But your silence is teaching them consequences can be permanent, can cost them people permanently, can create losses they can't undo. The teaching is painful, but pain that drives growth is loving gift even if painful gift. Most people who love avoidance enable them, make consequences soft, give endless chances, allow patterns to continue. But you're loving them differently. Loving them through letting them experience full weight of their patterns, through not rescuing them from consequences, through not making it easy for them to avoid facing themselves. The tough love through silence is gift, is you caring about their growth more than you care about their comfort, about their development more than their desire for you to relieve their pain. The caring about growth is real love, is love that wants them to become healthy even if becoming healthy happens without you, even if consequence that drives them to health is losing you permanently. Your silence is also protecting the memory of what you had. If you broke silence and returned to same dysfunction, if you gave them access and they repeated same patterns, you'd destroy the memory. Would turn what you had into just another failed attempt, just another cycle of closeness and distance, just more proof that patterns don't change. But maintaining silence preserves what you had as something real, something that mattered, something that ended not because it was broken, but because one person couldn't meet it and the other person loved herself enough to leave when unmet. The preserved as significant is honoring what you had, is not letting it be destroyed through repetition of dysfunction, is keeping it as memory of connection that was real even if unsustainable. The honoring is love for what existed, is love for yourself for leaving, is love for them by not letting them destroy memory through repeating pattern. The silence is preservation, is protection, is love expressed through boundary that maintains the good of what was while preventing the harm of what would be if you gave them access without change. The final truth about your silence humbling them. They rejected you expecting reaction, expected hurt, anger, pursuing. Got silence instead. And silence is destroying them in ways reaction never would have destroyed them. Is humbling them through showing them their powerlessness, their unimportance, their being wrong about you and about themselves. The humbling is appropriate consequence, is natural result of rejecting someone who had strength to accept rejection completely and walk away completely. Is them learning that rejection is power only if rejected person doesn't accept it, but you accepted it. Made it mutual through your silence. And mutual rejection is them being rejected by someone they rejected. Is role reversal that's destroying their ego, their certainty, their defended belief about their importance. The humbling might drive change. Might drive them to therapy, might drive them to face their patterns and do the work, might transform them into someone capable of intimacy. That would be ideal outcome. But ideal is rare. most likely they'll just carry the humbling, carry the regret. Carry you as the one who got away through humbling them with silence they couldn't break. They'll become more defended, or they'll become bitter, or they'll become resigned. The not growing from humbling is tragedy, is wasted suffering, is consequence that taught but teaching wasn't received, but whether they grow or stay stuck is their choice, their path, their work or lack of work. The humbling happened, the teaching occurred. What they do with it is theirs. Your job is maintaining the silence, maintaining the boundary, maintaining yourself. Your silence is working, is protecting you, is teaching them, is consequence functioning as consequence should. They're humbled, you're free. Both are appropriate outcomes. Both are results of their rejection meeting your strength. Their patterns meeting your boundary. Their defended incapacity meeting your self-love that requires more than incapacity can give. They're humbled. Let them be humbled. You stay silent. Let silence continue doing its work of teaching them what they need to learn while protecting you from patterns you don't need to experience again. The silence is power, is teaching, is love, is boundary, is everything it needs to be. Maintain it. They're humbled by it. You're freed by it. Both are exactly right.